Hello guys, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Flora. If you're new here, you're welcome to my channel. I make videos here in the United Kingdom, and I make videos about my life experiences living in the UK. In today's video, we're going to be going through some healthcare related interview questions. So without any further ado, let's just swipe straight into this video. Now, quite frankly guys, I have avoided this particular video because the last time I spoke about anything healthcare related, I think the video was titled "What No One Tells You About Being a Carer." I'm going to link it somewhere here, so if you haven't seen that video, please check it out. It's ever so informative. After I did that video anyways, I got tons and tons of questions, and I'm a kind of person that before I put out anything on my channel, I like to do my research, and each question came with its own burden. So in terms of, when I say burden, I mean like, if I'm unsure of what to say, I have to go research and answer. I can't just give you any answer. And a lot of people said, can you do like interview questions? And I thought, okay, fine, let me finally do this. Now, these interview questions I'm giving you guys are interview questions that you might get, you know, on your interview day if you've applied to be a healthcare assistant or a support worker or a carer, whatever the case may be. The roles, I mean, all of these positions I've mentioned they're all similar in one way or the other. So there isn't like a massive difference between a support worker and a carer and a healthcare assistant. You know, there are different things that each person does to make their role different, but the concept of care is still the same. So let us get to these interview questions because I wrote them on my phone. And yeah, I'm going to just tell you guys how I would answer these questions, or key points that you have to say, that I think you'd have to say for you to get those brownie points, like key things that you have to mention for you to get those points. I think one question they might ask you is, what skills do you think are important to work as a healthcare assistant? Or what skills do you think a support worker should have? Or what skills do you think a carer should have? Now, to help you guys with this, care is one thing that I think you should say. I think if you say something like a support worker or a carer, a healthcare assistant should be caring, that is a skill. Like, for you to do that job alone, you should be able to care for someone. So you always mention care. I think care is important. Say things like, and not just any type of care, like the care that the patient or the client would want. So not treating them like you would want to be treated, but treating them how they would like to be treated. Now, let me explain what that means. Like, I'm female, I can walk, I can run, I can do things how I want to be treated. If someone says, oh, let me walk with you, I don't expect them to bring a wheelchair for me because I can walk. But if someone else that can't walk, if you go to someone else that can't walk and say, let me walk with you, and you don't bring a wheelchair, then you haven't provided that care for the person. So basically what I'm trying to say is, if you're treating someone how they would like to be treated, is coming to them and saying, what would you like? So how they would like to be treated is, oh, I can't walk, I need a wheelchair. So you're treating them how they would like to be treated, not necessarily how you would like to be treated, because you can walk or I can walk and they can't walk. That's just a very lame example, but I wanted to explain such a way that you would understand. So mention care, mention communication. Tell them about communication, like not just communicating verbally but also written communication. Tell them how important it is to document. Like, when you're looking after a client, you're going to have care plans to read. You're going to even in some cases plan that care. So like, talk about written documentation, how important it is to document every single thing you do for the patient, how important it is to read and to be able to understand the patient's care. That's a skill. You know, how it's better to communicate to the person. Like, if you're talking to someone and they're sitting down, how it's always good to like bend down to their level, to have that eye contact. Don't speak down on someone, go down to the level, talk to them. Don't use like jargons, like speak to them in simple, clear sentences. They need an interpreter, how that is important, how you'd get that available. Talk about interpersonal skills. Like, that is important to be able to like adapt to every new situation. Talk about observational skills and how that is key. For example, if somebody is poorly, you should be able to tell that someone is poorly. For example, you know this particular client or patient to be always bubbly, and today he's in bed, he doesn't want to come out, he's covered himself in his blanket. Like being able to tell the difference that, oh, I can observe that this person actually not feeling himself. Being able to like do their blood pressure or whatever it is, and you know, give the result to the nurse. To that's if you're working in a hospital setting, or you know, being able to like express your concern to someone senior. So having that observational skills is key. Talk about time management skills. If you're a carer, a support worker, a healthcare assistant, you have to be able to manage your time, because sometimes you have a lot of people to look after, a lot of things to do. Being able to manage your time will make you progress quickly with things in that setting, and they always like people that know how to manage your time. So I've given you guys like 3 or 4 things that you can say, qualities that of a carer or qualities of a support worker. So let's get to the next question, so I'm not, you know, too much around this. I just hope that I've given you guys keywords, so you can go and Google what team working is to get more points to put in. You can go and Google what observational skills to get more points. You go and Google communication skills, just so that when you're talking, because when you've read broadly, when you're talking, you have a lot in your reserve. So when you've run out of what you've read, your reserve then comes in to help you. I don't know if I've spoken about listening skills. Listening skills also comes under communication skills. What are your strengths and weaknesses? I wouldn't advise you to go and say my weakness is anger. Please, if it is in real life, please resolve that, because a lot of people are going to annoy you. Staff, clients, patients, family members. You know, you're working with other people, everyone's not going to behave like you. So that is something that if you have, please resolve that. But let me just read the answer I've written down, because this is usually like a tricky one to answer anyway. And don't go talking about like lower self-esteem, because as a carer, you're an advocate for your patient, so you need to have good self-esteem to be able to see something. If you see someone maltreating a patient, you should be able to speak out and like whistleblow that. Basically, you should be able to whistleblow. You should be able to obviously like express your concerns to someone senior. So don't go talking about low self-esteem, because I don't think that's good. And because there's something like you like things done in an orderly manner, you sometimes see yourself as a perfectionist. You do appreciate that not everyone is like that, and you've learned that there are other ways of doing things. But being like a perfectionist is not a bad thing. Do you get what I mean? So although it can be annoying for some people, but it's not a bad, like a bad weakness to have. Do you get what I mean? That's just an example. Think about another weakness, but not something that you would say and people be like, oh, you're not good for this job. No, don't shoot yourself in the leg. If that's for a strength, like I said, strength and weaknesses, you can talk about problem solving, being able to work under pressure, because being a carer can put a lot of pressure on you. So if you mention that, being able to work under pressure, ability to work as a team effectively, that's also a good point. They might ask you about the 6 C's. This is like a nursing question, but obviously if you're working in a hospital, you're going to be working with nurses. If they ask you anything about the 6 C's, which I hope they won't ask you, but it's always good to know if you're going to be working as a carer, especially in the hospital settings. Guys, go Google it. I'm going to list it somewhere here or here. Care, compassion, commitment, communication, competence, and courage. I'll list it somewhere here, somewhere, just so that you know, you get it. That's that. They might ask you something like, how can you manage patient confidentiality in the workplace? Now, this is very easy. You say things like making sure that you dispose of confidential waste appropriately. If you're in a hospital setting, you always have a handover, even community settings as well, though, like patient's care plan. If you want to dispose of it, if it's not useful anymore, there'll be a confidential waste. You don't just go put it in the black bin or put it in the recycle. No, you don't do that. That's people's name, date of birth, their illnesses. You don't do that. You put that in the confidential waste. So you can say that. You can say things like putting patients' medical notes or medical files in an appropriate file place that is locked away from visitors. In hospitals, you have like places where you can put things like that. Also in community settings as well, you have a place where you can put like, this is for patients, you know, put by their bedside and put by a corner somewhere, or like a room just for like patient stuff. You can say that. By not sharing information about patients, not to any family member, even when you're in a staff room, your fellow colleagues, by not talking about the patients. except maybe if relevant. Okay, you're trying to pass vital information. You might get a scenario-based question. For example, tell me a time when you managed the patient confidentiality in the workplace. You can give an example like this. You know, a patient family rang in and they wanted to know about a particular patient or particular client, and it wasn't documented anywhere that I could share that information they were requesting for over the phone. So I went over to the patient and I asked, is it okay if I share this information with your family member? Called the particular family member's name, and the patient said yes. Then obviously, even when you're sharing, you don't share so much over the phone, because you never really know it's over the phone. So you can say you seek consent from the patient before sharing. You can also even say that you actually said to the family member you're sorry due to confidentiality purposes, you don't want to share the information over the phone, and if they wanted to see the patient or to speak to a doctor or speak to a nurse, then they have to come in person. That's an example to give. Or an example would be you saw a patient's care plan that was somewhere that it wasn't supposed to be, and you put it in the confidential waste. These are, you know, just things like that. Other scenario questions they might ask might include things like, tell me about a time where you've dealt with a difficult patient. I'm telling you now for free that if you're applying for a job as a carer, healthcare assistant, support worker, nurse, doctor, even customer service in Tesco here, or being a customer representative, or being a sales representative in Audi, Tesco, Lidl, wherever, River Island, they're going to have difficult people come in and try and be difficult. Even if you're even just over the phone speak, you're going to have difficult people coming in. So times when I've had challenging patients, I've always remembered to be calm, polite, friendly, and listen. For example, I had a patient who was very confused, lacked capacity to make informed decision, and wanted to go home. I was aware that this patient lacked capacity and it was best to act in the patient's best interest. So while the patient was banging the door and screaming, I risk assessed to say that the environment was safe, and I approached the patient calmly to de-escalate the situation. So I did that by firstly introducing myself to the patient, explained my role to the patient, explained to the patient why they're in hospital, reassured them that I will do my best to look after them, listen to their queries, because what patients or clients or don't like is when you're talking to them, they're telling you something that I want to leave this place now, and then you're saying no, you can't. Like you just pay attention, you just listen. So this is how I'm answering the question. So you listen, then you offer them a cup of tea. Can I speak to you privately? Can I, you know, they want to know that you're offering them help. They don't want to hear you say no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. Even if they're confused, even if they lack capacity, like a human being, because we're all human beings, we just want to be listened to, we just want to be heard. So you would obviously listen to them, and then you tell them, okay, I've listened to what you have to say. Can I explain this to you? Can I make you a cup of tea whilst I explain this to you? Can I make you a cup of coffee while? So this is how I've answered the question. So look after him, offered him a cup of tea, and even went ahead to call a family member who he remembered, which further made him calm and settled. So that's how I'll answer a question like that. If I'm talking too quickly and you've missed out something, feel free to pause this video, rewind, and obviously like listen to what I've said. Okay, so I don't know how many questions I've answered, but I just wanted this video to be short, crisp, and precise. Please, if when you ask me questions, I'm going to try my best to answer. But I just wanted this video to just give you like key points, and whilst obviously I'm editing this video, I'll put the key points in each question I've answered, the key things to say. You can elaborate, you don't have to answer it the way I've answered it, just have those key words, because half the time when you're with an interviewer in a room, it's the key words that matters. It's just once you've mentioned this, they have like a portfolio, whatever that they're following. Once you've mentioned teamwork, that's a brownie point, 10 over 10. Once you've mentioned observational skills, you know, once you've mentioned putting this in the confidential ways, once you've mentioned treating a patient with dignity and respect, once you've mentioned those key words, you get your brownie points. Lastly, I just want to say that if you've not worked as a carer or a healthcare assistant or a support worker before, and in an interview you get scenario based questions, just put yourself in that situation, put yourself in that situation like you've worked before, and give the answers that you would give like if you were in that situation. So, or give examples of when you've done this or this or that to a family member. Like one of the scenario questions talking about dealing with difficult people. Surely we must have had our family members that we've had issues with. How did we resolve that issue? So put yourself in that in that scenario. Put yourself in there and obviously answer it professionally. So like a family member, if you've resolved it by just saying something informal, but obviously to a patient you will say that. So just find a way. It's honestly, they're not expecting you to answer the questions as nurses or, you know, as physios or whatever. You know, they just want you to have that basic knowledge. And plus, once you get into the job role, you start learning. Just like driving, when you pass your driving is not when you're actually a driver, because it's only when you go onto the road by yourself, that's when you realize that, oh my god, this is me then learning how to drive. So you'll be fine. Don't be too scared about it. You'll be okay. When you get into the room, there are usually like 2 people, there might be 3 people in the room. Don't let the amount of people in the room, like, you know, make you nervous. I know it's easier said, but once you get nervous, then you might start forgetting things that ordinarily on a normal day you won't forget. So now that there's obviously COVID, you might actually get an interview virtually, so that's even better. Just grab a cup of tea and just get yourself comfortable. But either ways, I hope your interview goes well. Guys, feel free to go answer interview questions. There are a lot here on YouTube, and some people would answer in such a really like formal way, and you don't cram. Just don't, when you watch interview questions, don't try and cram what the person over the camera is telling you. Try and take key points and put it in your own way when you're answering your questions. That's how I advise people. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Until I come your way next time, remain blessed, guys, and good luck. All the best. Bye.